Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Chanel, and today we're going to be talking about things that you should consider when you're deciding where to go to college. As we go through each category, I want you to keep in mind that just because a school is highly ranked doesn't necessarily mean it is highly ranked in your perspective. These ranking systems don't usually consider factors that reflect what students and parents want within a college. What you think is the best school characteristic may be seen by these ranking systems as mediocre or even terrible. Having these same things within a school makes it more exciting to apply and actually attend the school. If you don't like anything about a school, your experience at that school isn't going to be as enjoyable as possible. I want you to write down at least 4 things for each category to get you started on this college decision journey. For example, if you live in Dallas, but you want to go to a school that's far away, going to UT Dallas isn't going to be the best way to fulfill that want. Or one of your needs might be you need a food plan because you don't know how to cook and eating out is too expensive. I want to preface by saying I'm not a financial advisor, but I want to share some financial information that I've learned throughout my college career. I want you to look at both the tuition and the cost of attendance for going to the university that you're considering. Tuition is the price you pay the university for the teaching and instructions at that university. So for your bio class, your math class, your humanities, whatever it is, that's what tuition is covering. And cost of attendance is the price that you pay for room and board, for books, for extra expenses, transportation, etc., etc. Some key terms you should be aware of when looking at the financial portion of college decision is loans, work study, grants, and awards. Especially due to the economic crisis that we're currently going through, especially after the aftermath of 2020 and the pandemic, finances are extremely important when looking at a university. If you're unaware, loans are not a discount. Loans have to be repaid either after you graduate or if you leave the university for whatever reason. Those loans have to be paid to whoever lent you those loans. Loans are what lead to the increasing student debt in America, and that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. Grants and awards should not have to be repaid unless explicitly stated, but if you have to repay it, it's not a grant or an award, in my opinion. When you're looking at different schools, compare the different financial awards that they give out to students. So maybe one school has a really high tuition cost, but the financial awards that they hand out is really big. So you could end up paying less for that university because of the financial award compared to a school that's relatively cheap, but their financial awards are very little. Usually the prestige of a university influences the tuition rate of that university. So big prestigious universities like Harvard, Stanford, UT. Public universities within America usually have different tuition rates for in-state students and out-of-state students, and usually private schools tend to have just a set rate for all students, no matter if you live in that state or you don't. If you have a very niche, very specific major, definitely look at schools that have that major. If you're a bio major, you can pretty much go to any school. But if you have, say, I'm gonna use neuroscience, that's my major. So if you're a neuroscience major, you probably won't have as many options as if you were a bio major. If you're open to multiple majors, definitely check and see if all of those or most of those majors are available at the school you're looking at. Because say you want to change and you want to switch from biochemistry to, I don't know, architecture, then if the school doesn't have both of those, then you're kind of like stuck. You're, what is it called? A hard rock and a rock in a hard place? I don't know. Y'all know what I mean. If you're unsure of what you want your major to be, you can either go undeclared to a university. Usually schools admit students who have a major decided already over somebody who doesn't. But if you're unsure, community college is a great alternative to a 4-year university, and it's usually a lot cheaper. When looking at universities, is that major successful within that university? So for example, I go to UT Austin. If I wanted to be a business major, I know that I'm in a good school because the McComb School of Business is highly ranked. I think it's probably like in the top 5 schools of business. But say I go to Texas State and I want to do business and their business school is trash. I mean, I don't know Texas State and their business school, but if their business school is trash, it would have probably been a better decision for me to go 30 minutes up the road to UT Austin. And I think making that decision of going to a university where your major is successful is important because then you'll have people to network with and better opportunities within that field that you're going into. So more specifically in academics, well, I guess more broadly in academics, the prestige of the university. A lot of research universities are highly ranked because they're doing a lot of research, successful research. Usually the top 20, top 25 schools are the most prestigious and their academics reflect that. I would say a top 50 school is still good. You're not going to be missing out much. I don't think it's probably maybe a little bit cheaper than top 20, top 25 school, but it's still a very good school. For me, prestige doesn't usually matter. I think you'll get a good education no matter where you go, but prestige will help you probably get a job somewhere. Like if you go to a company and they hire a lot of students that go to Brown University and you end up going to Orange University, because I can't think of another school. So you go to Orange University, they're gonna be like, I'm not gonna choose Orange University over Brown University because I know at Brown they get a good education. I've been to Brown. More closely related to academics, I'm gonna be talking about high school credit. In my personal opinion, I think AP is a scam. So if you're in your AP class, I guess just finish it out. To me, AP is a waste of time and a waste of money. I think you'd be better off doing dual credit classes, which is usually a community college is working with your high school and you get college credit while you're taking your high school classes. So for me, AP, you rely on one test at the end of the year and you need like a 3 or a 4 or whatever the number ranking system is. But if you take dual credit, you have the entire year to take tests, essays, quizzes, homeworks, whatever it is, to get your grade, to get that credit. So I think, in my opinion, dual credit is a better option if you can do that. Another important tip is to claim your high school credits prior to attending or registering for classes. I know at UT, the more hours you have, the earlier you register for classes. So say you come into UT and you've already claimed 12 hours of college credits. Then when it's time for registration, you're gonna have an earlier time compared to other freshmen that didn't claim any credits. And you're less likely to get probably waitlisted or even not be able to get into the class period. For example, a freshman with 12 hours is going to have a registration on, let's say, October 3rd, while a freshman with 0 hours is going to have registration on October 12th. For the student on October 3rd, they're going to have a better chance of getting all the classes they want compared to the student on October 12th, who's probably going to get some leftover classes, probably professors they don't want, class times they don't want. And if you're planning on attending UT, I'm going to be posting a video probably either later this week or next week talking about everything you should know as a UT student. So once that is uploaded, I will be leaving that in the description box below. But if you want to get notified as soon as it's uploaded, make sure to subscribe and turn on your post notifications. That way you get notified when I upload that video. The undergraduate population varies amongst states and cities. Smaller schools tend to allow more time one-on-one with a professor and TAs. The classes usually range from a few dozen to maybe 100 students, and the total population is probably a few hundred to a few thousand students. Larger schools tend to have more organizations, more majors, and more opportunities, but you don't get that one-on-one time with professors and TAs. Usually in classes at a larger university could be a few hundred to maybe even 1,000 students in your class. The total undergraduate population at a large university is usually 15,000 to maybe even 60,000 students. Also, large schools tend to have more parties. So if you're a party person, maybe consider going to a large school, but also remember, education comes first. The distance from a university to where you live permanently, your home. Things to consider when going to a large university. How are you going to get there? How are you going to leave in case of an emergency? And how are you going to pay for transportation? Are you going to walk? Are you going to bike? Are you going to fly, drive? How are you going to be traveling? When looking at distance, also think about your mental health. Is it more important for you to be close to your family? Or do you think you need to be far away from your family to be successful? I think that's a really important thing that people don't think about when they think about the distance of a school. Tying some finances into this, how are you going to be getting back and forth? How much is it going to cost you to get back and forth? How much is the rent in that city or the cost of living in that city? And is the amount that you're going to be spending, is it feasible for you? If your tuition is high and the amount that it costs to live in that city is high, it may not be feasible for you to go to that school. Tying finances into this distance category, I want you to consider how much does it cost to get there and back? How much is it to live in that city? And is it feasible? Because your goal is to leave undergrad with no student debt. But the tuition at your school is really high and the cost of living at that school is really high. It may not be in your best interest to go to that university if your goal is leaving without student debt. Obviously, you're going to be a student at this university and you're going to be living at this university or in the city of this university. So this is really important and you should not neglect this category when it comes to considering universities. This is where you're going to be living for the next 3 to 5 years, plus or minus some years. So definitely take these things into consideration. To get more of a personal knowledge of what students are experiencing, look at Instagram pages, Facebook groups. Reddit is a really big one. I know at least at UT, students love using Reddit. They will spill literally anything you need to know about the university. These pages are like Rate My Professor pages. They either have extremely good or extremely bad reviews. There's usually not mediocre in the middle reviews, so keep that in mind. Topics that people usually talk about on these pages are general student life, student dynamics, organizations, maybe bad professors that shouldn't be working at the school, different situations that students have faced, whether that's racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, etc., etc. Within student life, mental health is extremely important, and I definitely wanted to mention this. I want you to look into how are these colleges dealing with students that are struggling with mental health issues. Are there clinics? Are there counselors, therapists? Are there mental hospitals? How are they dealing with students that are experiencing these issues? Also, something that I don't think a lot of people will think about is how's the weather of where this university is? How is that going to impact your mental health? If you're gonna go to Seattle where it rains a lot, even though it's like 120 something degrees right now, but raining affects your mental health negatively, then you probably shouldn't go to a university that's in that type of environment. Some safety things I want you to consider about the campus safety and the city safety. So campus safety, are there campus police? Are there Ubers available for students? Is there a program where you can have somebody to walk with after like a late class? And for city safety, I watched Steady Quill, her video on where students should go to college, and I wanted to mention this tip, so shout out to her. If you're marginalized in any way in your identity, look at the way the city handles with support and safety of of those marginalized identities. Look at the city surrounding the university, because the university could be liberal, but the city that is in could be conservative, and vice versa. Also, study goals, she talked about how many conservative cities and areas have many isms that are present. So checking voting maps is also really important to understand the dynamic of that city. Now I'm going to be talking about more things on campus and around campus regarding student life. I want you to reach out to current students that have similar identities with you and see what their experiences are like. Ask about their perspective on different things around campus and on campus. Also look into organizations on that campus and see if any of them spark your interest. I know at UT we have African Students Organization, Indian Students Association, Muslim Students Association, Native American and Indigenous People Association. We have Q++, which is for LGBTQIA students. I believe that's within the engineering college for engineering students. I could be wrong. I'll put it on the screen if I am wrong. And there's services for students with disabilities. There's so many organizations on campus that you should find one, hopefully that matches with your interest and your identity. If not, definitely look at other colleges. Make sure you're comfortable on campus, because that's the most important thing when you're looking at universities. Another thing to look at within the student life is housing. Are freshmen required to live on campus? Some schools require freshmen to live on campus. And if you're not, how much is the rent going to be within that city or the area that is close to campus? Does your university have on-campus apartments? Do they have off-campus apartments? There's so many things to consider when it comes to housing. And also look at grocery prices, because I think a lot of people forget about that, but I think that's really important because you're gonna need to eat, and eating out definitely gets expensive and it just gets tiring. And if you want to avoid the freshman 15, then definitely look at grocery prices. Although acceptance rate isn't super important, it's definitely something you should consider when a school's acceptance rate is extremely low. I don't think acceptance rate should completely deter you from school, but it's definitely something that could influence whether you get into that school or you don't. Along with this, look up if your public university has automatic acceptance. I know at UT, we automatically accept the top 6% of your high school class, but generally in Texas, the top 10% is automatically accepted to all public universities. So definitely look into that. I don't know about in other states, but in Texas, we have the Texas House Bill 588, and under that bill, it allows public universities to automatically admit students who are in the top 10% of their class. I don't know if that only applies to Texas students, but it's definitely something to look into. I do know that some schools automatically admit the top 25% of a graduating class. It really just depends on what the class is, so definitely look into that for your university. It'll make things so much less stressful when it comes to applying to schools and having a school that you can have as a safety net, or even if it's your top choice. We finally made it to pretty much the end, which is the final decision-making process. After this, I'm going to talk a little bit about application process within America, so stay tuned for that if you want to know about application process. Now that we've made it to the final decision-making process, I want you guys to lay out all the schools that you are considering and write down the pros and cons. Write down the tuition rate, the cost of attendance, the school size, the cost of rent. Pretty much everything that we talked about prior to this, and have it in a spreadsheet. And that way, when you apply to schools or when you're looking at schools, you have these things all ready to go and you can compare each one of them. And if you're having a hard decision, that's a good thing. That means all the schools you're considering have all the wants, needs, and goals that you're looking for, or at least most of them. After you've applied and you've got accepted to all the schools you wanted to, consider these things when you're down to your last 3, 5, however many it is. Is this school going to bring me the least regret? Say you applied to Baylor and you got accepted into Baylor, but you're also considering Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and UT Austin. But you're thinking about Baylor and you're like, I don't know. Think about, is Baylor gonna bring you the least regret if you choose that school? If it brings you the most regret, don't choose it. And if you think Texas Tech is gonna bring you the least regret, definitely consider going there, because it'll probably be the best experience for you. Now we're gonna briefly be talking about the application process. The most important thing is don't procrastinate. Usually schools admit on a rolling basis. 2 application programs I'm gonna be talking about are Common App and Apply Texas. Common App is used by over 900 universities and colleges to complete the application process. Out of those 900 schools, most of them are in the United States, but some are also in Europe, Asia, and Australia. When I applied through the Common App, it was in 2017, 2018, and it was very dated. But as of 2019, they got an update, so it looks all fancy and actually relevant to the times that we're in. If you want to go to a school in Texas, Apply Texas is the place for you. It's similar to Common App, but it is still dated from what I saw. This is helpful if you want to go to multiple universities in Texas. With Apply Texas, it's a singular application for multiple university. The general baseline is not specific to each university. I think the essay questions are a little bit different depending on the university, but that's pretty much it. I recommend personalizing your essays for each school when you're using Common App and when you're using Apply Texas. I think this is important because usually different schools are looking for different things from students. Usually application fees are non-refundable and they charge a student anywhere from maybe $20 to $30 to maybe $100 to apply to that school. So once you pay that application fee, you can't get it back. And usually more prestigious, bigger schools charge you more for an application fee than smaller schools do. Here are some application fees of different universities that I looked up. I also have the acceptance rate underneath, and usually they do charge more for international students. So if you're an international student, that is something to keep in mind. Usually it's about $10 to $15 more than the regular application fee for American students. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video helped you decide where you go to college, and comment down below which university you're going to or which universities you're applying to.